What happens when a group of men target the wrong woman, thinking no one will care? This is the incredible story of a determined woman and her fiercely loyal dog who stood together against hate and violence. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the towering oaks lining the quiet suburban street. Mrs. Rosa Mitchell adjusted her sun hat, the silver locket around her neck catching the light as she clasped Bailey's leash. The Rottweiler, a broad and muscular dog with a sleek coat, trotted beside her, ears perked and steps confident. This was their daily ritual, an afternoon walk through the neighborhood that had been her home for more than 35 years. The town, quaint and nestled just outside the city limits of Millstone, had its quirks, moments of warmth and tension, but Rosa remained steadfast in her pride. The locket and bracelet she wore carried memories of her late husband Henry. They weren't lavish, but they were hers, and she wore them like a badge of her life's legacy. "Ready, boy?" Rosa asked, her voice light as Bailey wagged his tail in response. The pair strolled past trimmed lawns and picket fences, nodding at the occasional passerby. Rosa felt the sting of stares sometimes, lingering gazes that hinted at silent judgment. She held her head high. It was a good day, she thought, ignoring the distant hum of a truck that seemed to linger too long behind her. Turning onto Willow Lane, she felt Bailey tense slightly. His ears twitched, his posture growing alert. Rosa glanced back, noticing a pickup truck slowing to a crawl a few houses down. 4 men, all young and broad-shouldered, leaned out of the windows, their laughter, harsh and grating, carrying across the quiet street. "Just keep walking," Rosa whispered to herself, gripping Bailey's leash more tightly. He let out a low growl, as if sensing her unease. "Nice dog," one of the men shouted, his tone laced with mockery. Rosa didn't respond, keeping her pace steady. The truck stopped abruptly, and the men climbed out. "Afternoon, ma'am," the tallest of the group called out, his grin as cold as his voice. The others flanked him, their expressions a mixture of amusement and menace. "Nice jewelry you got there," another added, nodding toward her necklace. Rosa's heart quickened, but she didn't stop walking. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" she replied evenly, her voice steady despite the chill creeping up her spine. Bailey moved closer, his growl growing louder. The men didn't flinch, and Rosa's walk turned into a slow, calculated march toward safety. "Where you headed so fast?" one of them jeered, stepping in front of her path. Rosa paused, gripping Bailey's leash tightly. "Just taking a walk," she said, her tone calm but firm. Behind her, the sun dipped slightly lower, casting long shadows on the street. Rosa didn't flinch, her hands steady on Bailey's leash. The men's laughter rang in her ears, grating and venomous, but she refused to look away. Bailey growled again, his powerful body tense, ready to spring if needed. The tallest man leaned in closer, his face a mask of mocking politeness. "We're just admiring, that's all," he said, his eyes darting to the glinting necklace around her throat. "Don't get all defensive, ma'am. Ain't no harm in appreciating fine jewelry." "Admire it from a distance," Rosa replied sharply, taking a deliberate step forward. Bailey moved with her, his growl deepening. The man blocked her path, folded his arms, smirking. "Feisty for an old lady, aren't you? What are you so scared of? Us or your dog here losing his nerve?" Bailey barked suddenly, a sharp, commanding sound that made the group flinch. Rosa didn't need to look at her dog to know he was ready. His loyalty was unwavering, and it gave her the strength to face them. "You should listen to him," Rosa said calmly. "He's got better judgment than you." The red-faced man scoffed, stepping closer with a swagger. "Look, we ain't here to hurt you, unless you make us. Just hand over the necklace, maybe the bracelet too, and we'll be out of your hair." "Out of my hair?" Rosa's voice sharpened, her grip on Bailey's leash tightening. "What makes you think you can threaten me like this and walk away?" "Because no one cares," another man interjected, his voice laced with venom. "You're just some old black lady. You think anyone's going to give a damn about what happens to you in this country?" Rosa's expression didn't falter, but her chest tightened at the hateful words. She knew the undercurrents of her town, the prejudice that emboldened men like these, and the belief that her life was somehow worth less. But she wasn't about to show weakness. "You picked the wrong woman to mess with," Rosa said firmly, "and if you don't back off, you're going to regret it." The tallest man laughed, shaking his head. "Regret it, lady? We're giving you a chance here. Just hand over the goods, and no one gets hurt. You wouldn't want this to get messy. Bailey barked again, louder this time, cutting off the man's words. His muscles coiled as if ready to pounce, his teeth bared in warning. The tension in the air grew thicker, the men exchanging uneasy glances even as they tried to maintain their bravado. The man closest to Bailey stepped forward hesitantly, pointing at the dog. That mutt's all bark, no bite. You can't scare us with your furry little bodyguard. Try me, Rosa said coldly, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. I promise you, he's not bluffing. The red-faced man snorted, trying to laugh off the moment. Yeah, right. What's he gonna do, drool us to death? Rosa took a step forward, her voice dropping to a sharp edge. He'll do whatever it takes to protect me, and you'll wish you had listened. For a brief moment, the group hesitated. Bailey's growls seemed to fill the street, echoing off the houses around them. But the red-faced man shook his head, turning to his companions. She's full of it. Let's just take what we came for. The tallest man nodded, stepping closer. Fine. You don't want to cooperate? Guess we'll have to take it the hard way. The four of them began to spread out, moving to encircle Rosa. She stepped back, keeping Bailey close, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she couldn't outmatch them physically, but she also knew Bailey was more than capable of holding his own. You're making a mistake, Rosa warned, her voice unwavering. Walk away now while you still can. The tallest man sneered. Lady, you talk a big game for someone with no backup. Who says I'm alone? Rosa countered, her eyes flicking to the neighbor's security camera perched above a nearby garage. She didn't know if it was recording, but she hoped the subtle gesture would give them pause. The men followed her gaze but quickly dismissed it. The red-faced man rolled his eyes. Yeah, someone's always watching. Save it, no one's coming to help you. One of the men darted forward, testing Bailey's resolve. The dog barked ferociously, snapping his jaws just inches from the man's outstretched hand. The would-be attacker stumbled back, cursing under his breath. Damn dog, he shouted. This ain't worth it. Yes, it is, the tallest man snapped. She's bluffing. That mutt can't take all of us. Rosa held her ground, her voice cutting through the growing chaos. He won't have to. The street seemed to hold its breath as the men circled closer, their taunts growing sharper, their movements more deliberate. Bailey's growls were unrelenting now, a steady, menacing vibration that echoed in the heavy afternoon air. Rosa stood her ground, her pulse racing, but her gaze steady. The red-faced man lunged first, aiming for Rosa's arm. Bailey sprang forward like a tightly wound spring released, his bark piercing and ferocious. His teeth sank into the man's sleeve before he could reach her, yanking him backward with a force that sent him sprawling onto the pavement. The man screamed, clutching his arm as he tried to kick Bailey away. Get him off me! Get this damn dog off me! He bellowed, his voice laced with pain and fear. Call him off! One of the others shouted, his earlier bravado crumbling. Rosa didn't flinch. I warned you, she said evenly, her grip on Bailey's leash firm. This is on you. The tallest man cursed under his breath and motioned for one of the others to help. Get the dog off him, he barked, but none of them dared move closer. Bailey released his grip on the red-faced man and stood over him, snarling, his hackles raised like a lion guarding its territory. Come on, we've got numbers, one of the men urged, though his voice shook. It's just a dog. Just a dog, Rosa said sharply, her voice cutting through the panic. He's more loyal and capable than any of you. Another man darted forward, this time trying to grab Bailey's leash. Bailey spun quickly, his powerful jaws snapping dangerously close to the man's hand. The would-be attacker recoiled, stumbling back into his companions. You're all pathetic, Rosa said, her voice steady. 4 grown men, and you can't even handle one old lady and her dog. The tallest man's face twisted in anger. Enough of this, he shouted, his temper snapping. He reached for Rosa directly, grabbing at the chain around her neck. Before he could tug it free, Bailey lunged again, this time aiming higher. His teeth latched onto the man's jacket, shaking him violently. Stop! Stop! The man screamed, flailing as he tried to shove Bailey away. His companions hesitated, clearly torn between helping and running. The red-faced man, still clutching his injured arm, snarled from the ground. She's not worth this. Let's just leave. But the tallest man wasn't ready to back down. No way. Not until we get what we came for. His words were defiant, but the desperation in his tone was impossible to miss. Rosa stood rooted, her hands still gripping Bailey's leash. Her eyes swept the scene, landing briefly on the security camera across the street. She knew it was capturing every second, every desperate motion, every hateful word. That camera was her witness, and it gave her the strength to speak again. "Leave now," she said firmly, her voice unyielding, "and maybe you'll walk away with what little dignity you have left." The group hesitated, their bravado wavering as their gazes darted between the ferocious dog and the resolute woman who refused to back down. The air was thick with tension, every second feeling like an eternity. But no one moved. Not yet. The men exchanged tense, uncertain glances, their earlier confidence unraveling in the face of Bailey's relentless growls and Rosa's calm defiance. Yet despite the fear flickering in their eyes, the tallest man's pride refused to let him back down. He squared his shoulders and turned to his group, his voice dripping with venom. "We're not letting her win," he growled. "It's 4 of us and 1 dog. She can't stop all of us." Rosa raised an eyebrow, her hand firm on Bailey's leash. "4 of you? Seems like my dog's already outmatched you." Her words cut deep, and the red-faced man cursed under his breath, clutching his injured arm. "Let's just take her stuff and go. I'm not sticking around to get bit again." "She's bluffing," the tallest man snapped, stepping closer. "She can't control that dog forever." Bailey barked sharply, cutting through the heavy tension like a knife. The sound echoed off the quiet suburban homes, startling the men once more. But this time, the tallest man lunged without warning, his hands outstretched toward Rosa's necklace. The sudden movement ignited chaos. Bailey surged forward, breaking Rosa's steady grip on the leash. The dog's powerful body collided with the man, knocking him to the ground with a resounding thud. His scream pierced the air as Bailey pinned him, growling ferociously, his teeth bared inches from the man's face. "Help me!" the man shouted, his voice cracking. He struggled against Bailey's weight, his bravado entirely gone. "Get him off!" But the others hesitated, their courage evaporating as they watched their leader grapple with the massive dog. One man took a step forward, but Bailey snarled, snapping his teeth in a warning that froze him in his tracks. "Not so brave now, are you?" Rosa said coldly, standing tall despite her racing heart. "Shut up," one of the others yelled, but his voice lacked conviction. The sound of his shout was quickly drowned out by something else, a distant wailing sound growing louder with every passing second. Sirens. The men's heads whipped around, the telltale sound of police sirens sending a ripple of panic through the group. One of them swore loudly, his face paling. "Cops! We gotta go!" "Not without him," another protested, pointing to the man pinned under Bailey. The tallest man thrashed beneath Bailey's unyielding grip, his face contorted in fear. "Get me out of here!" he screamed, but none of the others moved. Rosa crossed her arms, her expression stern. "Looks like your friends are smarter than you. They're about to run and leave you to deal with the consequences." The red-faced man backed away slowly, his injured arm hanging uselessly at his side. "Screw this. I'm not going to jail." He turned and bolted toward the truck, the others quickly following suit. "Wait! Don't leave me!" the leader screamed, his voice filled with desperation. But the other men didn't look back, scrambling into the truck and peeling out in a screech of tires. The sound of the sirens grew louder, echoing down the street as the truck disappeared around the corner. Rosa stepped forward cautiously, her voice steady but commanding. "Bailey, hold!" The dog obeyed, his growls subsiding slightly, but his stance firm. He kept the man pinned, his teeth just inches from the man's throat. The leader's chest heaved as he stared up at Bailey, his earlier arrogance replaced by sheer terror. The wailing sirens grew closer until a patrol car turned the